President Cyril Ramaphosa says the long-term impact of the coronavirus on African countries will be severe. Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize says Gauteng is expected to be the new epicenter of the coronavirus when the ministry announces the next stats. Western Cape Premier Alan Winde says he will continue to perform his duties whilst in isolation after he tested positive for the coronavirus. And a reminder of the question of the day: what extra precautions are you taking with the rise in the COVID-19 infections that we're seeing? The health minister saying the storm that we were preparing for has now hit. Basically, we are heading towards those peak infections, and we're seeing that in the numbers, 10,000, more than 10,000 in a 24-hour period, the highest death toll recorded yesterday. Those last numbers released at midnight last night. Hashtag Full View on Twitter, or you can send us a voice note or video call us on 066 479 8056. All right, a focus on some international news now. New York City schools will reopen in September after the summer break with a blended learning model, with some pupils attending in person learnings while others continue to do so remotely. City officials announced the rotation model after 75% of the city's parents indicated they want their children physically back in the classroom as soon as possible. This comes as President Donald Trump indicated that his administration would be putting pressure on governors to get schools reopened despite surging cases of the coronavirus in other parts of the country.
It's the largest public school system in the country, 1,800 schools, 1.1 million pupils, and the mayor believes it will determine the larger trajectory of the city amidst the coronavirus.
When we know that health and safety means social distancing, therefore we have to use a lot more space for fewer kids, it makes very clear the approach we will use is blended learning. And blended learning simply means at some points in the week, you're learning in person in the classroom. At other points in the week, you're learning remotely. And we all know remote learning is not perfect, but we've also seen a lot of kids benefit greatly from it during these last months. And we know we'll be able to do it even better in the months ahead.
Officials indicating that the reopenings would be data-driven, with a high bar on health and safety.
Requiring face masks for students and staff, increasing access to hand washing and sanitizers, and continuing to maintain physical distancing. As a quick reminder, schools will be supplied with additional cleaning supplies, including hand sanitizers and disinfectant wipes and PPE. DOE Central will provide all of this. It will not come out of individual school budgets. Our buildings will be deep cleaned on a nightly basis with electrostatic disinfectant sprayers, and HVAC systems are being upgraded as we speak to ensure better ventilation in all of our schools.
With increased pressure being exerted on state governors by the White House to reopen despite safety concerns, has the United States recorded a new daily record of more than 60,000 cases in the last 24 hours. Harvard University, among the first to announce that all classes will be conducted online when students return after the summer break, irritating the president.
I see where Harvard announced that they're closing for the season or for the year. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's an easy way out, and I think they ought to be ashamed of themselves. You want to know the truth. But I noticed that today. And probably others are doing that. That's called the easy way out. I don't know if people are helping them. I guess their endowment's plenty big. They don't have any problem with that.
In a vast country like the US, there's simply no one system that fits all.
There will be some counties where the infection is so low, you won't have to worry. You could open the schools with very little additional type precautions other than the usual public health. In the other situation, you might have counties or parts of the state in which there is enough viral activity that you might want to modify scheduling. Things like masks at all time, things like alternating morning, afternoon, decreasing the size and the space between desks. These are things that school principals and superintendents are thinking about in a creative way.
The long and winding road to recovery, a complex endeavour at the very least. Sherwin Brycepease, SABC News, New York.
So we heard him talking about Harvard there. Meanwhile, the United States has now announced that all international students must go back to their respective countries as universities have decided to go online. Many have criticized President Donald Trump for this move. We cross live to Washington, where our correspondent Kate Fisher is standing by. Kate, thank you for being with us. Tell us more about this big announcement.
That's right. The Trump administration took higher education institutions by surprise with this announcement, saying that any of those colleges and universities that have decided to do all their tuition online virtually in the autumn semester, the next academic year here in the US, well, then any international students attending those universities where those courses are online can no longer remain in the country. Their visas would be revoked and they would need to leave, or they would face deportation. Essentially, critics are saying that this is the Trump administration's way of trying to force universities to reopen for in-person tuition. As you heard Donald Trump there very much urging that, wanting to see the country reopening. And this is a way of doing it, essentially saying that if you don't let students back onto your campuses, then we will deport the international students. And of course, international students pay high fees to attend universities here, and they contribute over $44 billion a year to the economy, not to mention the amount of money they give to those institutions that have them. So it puts real pressure on those universities to reopen their doors when perhaps they weren't ready to because of the health concerns surrounding COVID-19.
And I mean, for the students, this must be devastating. They plan for years, maybe move heaven and earth to get to the US in the first place. Did you manage to speak to any?
Yeah, absolutely. This is just terrifying for many of them. As you say, this is a huge move. They have worked towards it for a very long time, many of them using all their savings, much of their family's savings, to come here. And now there is this huge question mark over what is going to happen. They don't know. That the Trump administration says, you know, if your classes are online, you can change to a different university where you can attend in person. But we're already in July, and many of these universities will reopen next month. It doesn't really give them very much time to do that. There's a huge amount of uncertainty because even those colleges that at the moment are having some in-person tuition, if at some point case numbers rise again and they feel they need to close back down and go fully online, then those students would also face deportation. So a lot of students who are here already worried about what to do, and even if they can return to their home countries, of course, international flights are very difficult at the moment. And those students who are currently still abroad and expecting to come to the US to start their classes, well, they're concerned about whether they really want to do this with this huge question mark hanging over them. And of course, those who are perhaps considering coming to the United States to study in the future will be thinking, well, do I really want to spend up to $60,000 a year on an education that I have to do online from my home in whichever country I'm already in?
Any reaction from foreign missions, from embassies, from other countries?
So far, we don't have a response from any embassies, but the institutions themselves have responded. You mentioned there about Harvard University had decided to go fully online. Well, Harvard and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT in Boston, two of the most prestigious institutions here in the US, they have filed a lawsuit against the immigration services here, saying that they believe that this is aimed at causing chaos in higher education. And that they believe it would be unsafe to continue with this. So they are incredibly angry about it. They say they'll be working with all those international students that are very confused about what their future is, but they're also pursuing this legal action to try to get an injunction to stop this from happening, so that those students can stay in the country and attend classes online or in person. The president of Harvard clearly very angry and saying that this happened without any notice, and its cruelty is surpassed only by its recklessness.
Sure.
So clearly a lot of anger there from not just the students but the universities as well.
So finally, I mean, this is incredible. Elite institutions in the US seem to be questioning the motives of the president, saying that he's using these international students as pawns.
Absolutely, and in fact, in the lawsuit that has been filed by Harvard and MIT, they cite an interview by Kevin Cuccinelli, who is the person in the Trump administration responsible for this decision. And he gave an interview to CNN, the news channel here, in which he said that he thinks this will encourage schools to reopen. And Harvard and MIT are saying that gives you some evidence to suggest that this is the Trump administration's actual reasoning behind this move, is to use these students as pawns in a way to force the universities to reopen. The Trump administration wants to say the United States is open, our educational establishments are open, life is carrying on as normal, and they are using all the methods they have in their power to do that, including this idea of threatening deportation to foreign students if they're not attending in-person classes.
All right, we'll follow that fight in the United States. Thank you very much, our correspondent there, Kate Fisher. Now, the UK has two